Hi, my name is Jimmy Stegall, and I'm the Procedural Solution Specialist for Dentsply Sirona Lab Division. And my history, my background, I helped build a large lab in South Carolina, doing 100 dentures a day. So dentures is near and dear to me. And today, what we're going to do is I'm going to share with you some of the advances we've made in denture technology and how they can be done better and faster, how the technology makes it scalable for you as a lab. And we're also going to talk about the clinical side, a way to take advantage of the digital technology and move sort of halfway between analog and digital, and how we can help our dentists using this digital technology to give us the data we need to fabricate great dentures. So let's get right to it. So as we go around the country talking to our customers about, hey doc, you want to try a digital denture, the question often becomes, okay, what's a digital denture? And in reality, the majority of the digital denture process is done in a lab at this point. But today we're going to bring in a analog technique that dentists certainly know how to do, but we're going to digitize it to give us the better records. So let's talk about dentures for a second. If I go to a lab friend or a dentist and I hold up this denture and I ask, what do you see different about this denture, right? Is it anything unique to you? The good thing about Lucitone digital print, and that's what this denture is that it doesn't look anything different than what we've always done, right? So here's a traditional fabricated denture, and we have the aesthetics, we have the teeth that look the same, but we have some really good advantages with this denture, and so let's talk about that a little bit now, right? We all know how traditional dentures are made, right? We're going to have, some waxing, some investing, some processing, a lot of hands-on things where, something can shrink or expand and not fit well. But we've dealt with that for years, right? And we make really good dentures that way. And today, what we'd like to do is look at a different way that can help not only make that more efficient, but also make it more scalable, because the techniques, opposed to what we've been doing, the newer techniques using digital technology are so much easier to train and get somebody up to speed in a quicker time frame. But as we all know, right, this was sort of the way we've always done it, right? Dentists go to dental school and they learn that a denture should take 7 appointments, right? We go through a couple of impressions, a couple of bites, do some try-ins, send it back to the lab, maybe do another couple of try-ins. But we know there's some distraught feelings in there somewhere. Quite often we hear dentists having anxiety about doing dentures and not liking to do dentures because, number one, a lot of appointments, right? 7 appointments at minimum. It's usually more like 8 or 9, right? And then the things that you have to do, the way we take the bite registrations, the way we take the impressions, it's a challenge. And patients don't quite know how to do what we want them to do, and dentists don't quite know how to use the tools that we have analog-wise to get what we want ideally. So what we want to try to do is maybe improve that a little bit using digital technology. But again, a dentist will ask me, so what's digital about digital dentures? And in the clinical world, you don't have to change a thing. A dentist can take impressions and bites like they've always taken them, and we can fabricate a digital denture in the lab. Right? Easy to do, fun to do, and everybody knows how that works. But we also know that most dentists don't like doing the traditional steps. So let's figure out a way to improve that. So there is some digital inroads into intraoral scanning, right? We know, looking at some images, that we can scan intraoral edentulous ridges, but it's a very difficult thing to do. It's very hard with patient movement, tongue position, how loose or attached the tissues are. It's a hard scan to get. It's being done, absolutely, but it's certainly a difficult thing to do. What we're going to talk about today is something to make that a whole lot easier for you, and we're going to move it outside of the mouth to do it. But let's talk about digital dentures to dentists as a whole. Why do a digital denture? Well, I think we back up and ask the dentist, what do you not like about dentures, right? What is it that you hate about doing dentures? And our dentists tell us the same thing over and over again. Too many impressions, too many appointments. Patients come back too many times with a fit issue that I have to adjust the inside. And so when we look at digital fabrication of dentures in the lab, it's exciting to know that we solve all those pain points, right? We're using digital technology to either take a digital scan, or we're scanning an impression, or we're scanning a model and we're going to fabricate that denture in the virtual world on that digital model. What that means is that denture is going to fit that tissue better than anything we've ever done before, because we know that CAD/CAM technology makes a better fitting part, whatever we're fabricating. So the fit, which means to the dentist, the fewer number of appointments for adjustments internally, right? All those patients come back 8, 10 times saying that it hurts here or there. Now we can say, here's a denture that probably not going to need that as much. Another huge advantage to the clinical world, the dentist, when they go through all those appointments, get a denture made, deliver the denture, get it finally comfortable to the patient, and then the patient calls a couple of weeks later and says, I lost it, I broke it, right? The dog chewed it up. What do, right? We start all over. Digital technology puts an end to that completely, right? Because once the lab designs that denture, it's in the computer, it's in the archive. Doctor calls back and said, hey, the patient lost the denture 2 weeks after I made it. Boom, bring it back up, reprint it, send it to the doc within a couple of days. So those are the two biggest benefits using digital technology. The Lucitone digital print denture brings that to the table in spades, guys. I can tell you that we've been making dentures using milling technology, and while that's good, it gives us strength, aesthetics, durability, it's also very non-productive. It takes a long time to mill a denture. We're talking 3 to 4 hours, right? And so if you've got a lot of dentures to make in your lab a day, that's tough to do without a lot of milling machines or a lot of time. Everybody in our world knew that printing technology was where we were going. And when the Generation 1 materials came out, it was exciting to have finally a printed denture. But one of the rules in my lab was that anytime we add a CAD/CAM technology, it had to be at least as good or better than what we were already doing. Right? The Generation 1 materials, they gave us a better fit, they gave us a better workflow, a better speed, but the final product was not as strong as what we'd been doing traditionally, and it wasn't as aesthetic. So that will improve with time, and it has. Now we're in what we call the Generation 2 printing denture technologies, and the only one out there now is the Lucitone digital print. It exceeds ISO high impact standards. Right? It is strong enough to hold up in the mouth as good, or in actuality better. It is 2 times stronger than what we used to do, right? An analog denture we made with Lucitone 199 a few years ago has a fracture resistance of about 1,500 joules per meter squared, right? That's the number we use when we stretch something until it breaks, which relates to a denture in the mouth. The Lucitone digital print, in the mouth, 3,000 joules per meter squared. So it is literally twice as strong as any denture we've ever made. The carbon technology, the printer that we use, is a pour and print technology. So there's no mixing, no shaking. Comes in 6 Lucitone shades, the shades that we always know and love and remember. And it's a simple, fast process. We print a denture base in 2 hours. We use existing technology or chemistry on the carded teeth that we use. So they fit really good, they're durable, and the result is a denture that most dentists and lab guys can't tell a difference, but twice as strong, just as aesthetic, and certainly twice as durable. But the big win is in the lab side that it's easy and fast to make. So we're going to talk about today not so much, how to make those dentures in the lab. We're going to talk about using the advantage of that digital denture and working with our docs on making that denture in a very accurate, a very fast way so that they can cut down on the number of appointments, right, and make it easier for themselves and their patients. So we'll get into the reference denture workflow next, and just stick with us. Okay, guys, when we're doing a digital denture, there's very simple steps, right? The doctor has to generate records, right? So that's your impression and your bite, right? What we're going to do in the lab, or today we're going to learn about letting the dentist help us, number 2, digitize those records. In the past, we have taken the doctor's impressions, our models, and we put them in our lab scanner. We digitize their records that way. We can still do it that way. That's not a problem. All our software and scanners today, you can scan the impressions, you can scan the models, you can scan the bite, and digitize everything. Today, we're going to move into letting the docs help us with digitization of those records, right? After that, then it's pick up where you've always done it, right? We're going to use our creation software, our design software to design the restoration, right? And from that design, we're going to send the output file over to our CAM software to either print or mail that restoration. So 4 simple steps: generate the records, digitize the records, create the part, create the appliance, and the 4th step, output of the printed part to the dentist. So we're going to start today with generating the records, right? And we don't have a patient here, so we're not going to do it in a live patient, but I'm going to use an actual denture and a model to show the dentist, to help the dentist learn how to take these reference denture impressions. Now, most dentists certainly know how to take a wash impression and a denture, so this is not something that we have to spend a lot of time on, but we do want to go through it so you can see the steps. Right, and here I'll give you the overview. Right, I'm going to use a heavy-bodied, rigid material along the borders. Right, we're going to put that in the patient's mouth, and we're going to capture the borders using traditional border molding movements. Right, we're going to have the patient do the ooh and the e sound, have them move their tongue left and right, open wide, close, and then swallow a couple of times, and that will capture all the muscle movements at the borders. Once that is set up, we'll come back and we do a wash impression on top of that, go back in the mouth and do the same border molding movements and let that set up, and we'll have our completed impression. So we'll get right down to it. We'll start with the heavy bodied, or the rigid. I'm using the Aquasil. Right, I like our Aquasil Ultra rigid fast set because of the speed, but also its scannability. It scans really well, but it's also a wonderful wetting impression, being a polyvinyl. So you're literally going to have the dentist just say, hey, I don't like to use adhesive in these impressions, right? Because I want to be able to clean it up easily when I'm done. But I am not going to use a tray adhesive, otherwise the cleanup would just be too difficult. So just a thin border around, a thin layer of heavy bodied around the border. Right, we're going to go to seat it in the mouth. We're going to use light finger pressure in the mouth on the palate, right, and then we're going to ask the patient to do the typical border molding movements. So we do that, then let the patient sit there and let it set up. All right, so our border molding material has set up now. We've taken it out of the patient's mouth and we're ready to do the wash impression. I went ahead and did the lower, save a little time, but this is the Aquasil Ultra light bodied fast set. So just going to inject enough to get a nice thin layer of wash. I'll go back around the borders as well to capture those last muscle details. And again, back to the patient's mouth. Seat it down with fingertip pressure in the palate. I just want to see a little bit around the borders. All right, and do the same on the lower. So all we're doing, guys, and this is a good way to talk to the dentist about this, is that this is your preliminary impression and bite registration. So in the past, where they might have to use a custom tray or a wax rim to do this, we're going to do this with the patient's existing dentures, right? So 8 out of 10 denture patients have a set of dentures. So that's the population we're going to start with in our entry into the digital denture workspace. We just tell our docs, look, you know, anytime you're talking to a patient about dentures, you know, ask them, do they have their existing dentures, or you'll know it, right? And we're going to use those dentures to take the preliminary impression and the bite registration and compare that with the old traditional workflow of using custom trays and alginates and two impression appointments plus a wax rim appointment to get that vertical registration. Now we're going to be able to do it with the patient's existing dentures, which is very comfortable for the patient, right? So it's going to be easier for the dentist and the staff to get that vertical. Quite often I'll get the question, okay, if we're going to take the bite registration with these two dentures, what if the dentures are really worn out occlusally and the patient's overclosed? Very, very simple, right? When we get ready to take the bite, we take some wax or some lab putty and we make little blocks to go in the posterior section to the millimeter vertical open we want to go to. All right, so I'll make a little wax block, say a millimeter thick, put it in the posterior teeth, and then put my bite registration material in, which gives me the millimeter opening. So plenty of ways around this process. End result is that I don't really care how bad the dentures are, the existing dentures. They're going to be a great impression and a great bite registration tool for the dentist and the patient. It can be a lot easier to get records, right? We all know that bite rims don't often give us the exact vertical occlusal plane we need of where to set the teeth on the new denture, but with this technique, we're absolutely going to get a better occlusal plane because it's one the patient already has and they're comfortable with. So we'll let this set up. We'll come back for the next step, which is the bite registration. All right, guys, once the wash material is set up, then we're ready to take the bite registration, right? We're going to take a bite registration like we always have, but the patient's existing dentures with the wash impression is going to be very comfortable and easy for both the patient and the dentist to guide into the proper occlusion. Obviously, we're going to do this on models, but we're going to use either Regisil, which is a great fast-setting bite registration material, or in this case, I've got this gun already loaded up with the heavy-bodied. And what I typically do is just go bicuspid to bicuspid with just a layer. All right, and I can do this outside of the mouth. Now that we have the impressions right, I can hold the two dentures in my hand and do this outside the mouth, or we can go back in and put the patient's dentures in and have them closed down, right? So again, using models here, I'm just going to guide it down into its occlusion and make sure the bite material is not holding me up unless I had the blocks to open the vertical. And we let that set up. Take about 2 minutes and we'll come back. All right, guys, our wash is set up. We've got our bite registration, and so now chair side, we're just evaluating to make sure we captured all the soft tissue detail really well. Again, confirming our vertical is right, because our next step is to move outside of the mouth with the denture, with the impressions, with the bite registration, and take advantage of our digital scanner, our PrimeScan, to capture this data to send to the lab for fabrication of our dentures. So, obviously the advantage to that is once we capture that scan with the PrimeScan, then we're able to clean all of this off, give it back to the patient, and they can leave with their dentures, which is a big win for them. And they'll find this whole process, if they've obviously they've done dentures before, so they've been through the traditional custom trays, they've been through the wax rims, and they're going to say right away how much easier and faster this was. And it is. It's a lot more comfortable for the patients, but the big win for them is they don't have to be without their dentures anytime at all in order to do this when the doctor uses their PrimeScan to do so. So we've captured all the data. We're going to scan it with our PrimeScan in our next segment, and the lab will have a maxillary model, a mandibular model, and the bite registration, plus the existing denture as a guide for their virtual setup when they start fabrication in the virtual world of the loose tone digital print denture. And typically what we're going to do with that in the lab is that we're going to design a denture to fit this space, to fit this occlusal plane, right, because it's going to be comfortable to the patient, and we're going to create what we call a loose tone digital try-in, right? It's an upper lower denture. It's a monolithic version of our design, right? This set to the occlusal plane we just took the impression and bite for. And we're going to design these. We're going to print these out monolithic. It comes in 6 Vita shades. These are going to go to the dentist for our final impression and bite, right? So this is going to be the best in custom tray and bite rim the dentist has ever had because it's a totally new setup, but it's set up to the occlusal plane of the existing denture. Now again, again, if we open the bite, it's an easy thing to communicate, right? We just open the bite with a couple of blocks and we scan that, showing that open vertical, which gives the lab more room to put the teeth in. So this is going to go to the doc, right? And here's where it really gets different from what we've used to done. Instead of a wax rim, we have teeth, right? So the doc can put this in the mouth, have the patient close down, and because it was a wash and existing impression, existing denture, it should fit and feel pretty good, right? The occlusal plane, where the teeth occlude together, should feel pretty good. But let's say that the patient feels like it's hitting a little high on one side or the other, then all the dentist has to do is take a burr and adjust those spots. Right, put it back in. How's that feel? Right, it feels better, right? And then here's the big win for the patient, right? We're going to give these to the patient after we do those small modifications and say, we want you to take this home, right? This is going to be your test drive denture. We're going to let you wear this tonight. Eat dinner with it. Sleep with it if you want to, but it's as strong as anything we're going to do in the future, so don't worry about breaking it. But you know, it may not look exactly like a denture because it's basically just a test drive, but it's going to give you the ability to wear it for a little bit to see how it's going to settle in your mouth, right? And then come back tomorrow into the office and tell us those things. And it doesn't have to be tomorrow. It can be 3 days later. It could be 3 weeks later. These dentures will hold up really, really well, but of course the aesthetics aren't what we need them to be. So we have that conversation with the patient. We send them out the door, or if that's just not going to be acceptable because of the aesthetics, we just tell the patient, okay, just get up, walk around the office for about 20 minutes. What we're trying to do is see how these fit on the intaglio side to make sure that we've got a good impression from our reference denture, right, and adjust any spots accordingly. But ideally, they go home, they wear it overnight, they come back the next day, and they give us a lot more valuable information the second day. Well, you know, when I ate, it felt like it was lifting up over here, or this tooth was hitting a little hard over there, or I noticed it started hurting a little bit on this part of my gums. Great information, right? Not information we typically get from a denture try-in. So what do? We grind a little bit more, we take our impression material, and we do another impression wash inside these try-ins. Right? Now what we're doing is we're fine-tuning with more valuable data than just another impression tray. So we take another impression wash, we make whatever adjustments on the outside we need to, and then we can either go to our PrimeScan and scan that data and send it to the lab as, again, an upper scan, a lower scan, and a bite scan. And the lab can take that data, merge it with the design they have in their computer, make the modifications to print the final denture. We literally get this done in 3 appointments, guys, because of this workflow. This data is so much better than the way we've done it in the past, right? So after we've done this try-in, made the adjustments, goes back to the lab, then the lab fabricates the final denture. Some offices and some labs have even cut this appointment out because what they're finding is using a reference denture impression to take your first impression and bite, it gets you a whole lot closer to the final best result we can get. And when we make the try-in, a lot of times, 3 or 4 out of 5 times I've been told from a lot of labs that it's pretty darn good the way it is. We don't need to change anything. Well, if that's the case, and we just pick up the phone and call the lab, said your try-in was perfect, please go ahead and make the final exactly like that. They have the file, nothing different from these 2 files, and so the lab creates the final. So some labs have said, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to go straight to this because it's working so well. I think that's a very valid workflow today, and a lot of labs are enjoying that. That's the benefit of digital technology, guys. That's the benefit of having a test drive take-home loose-stone digital printed try-in. So our next step in the lab is, right, the doctor has the denture impressed, has it scanned, has a bite, and they say the patient wants a new set of dentures. Here's the occlusal plane, here's the impression, have at it. And they're going to send us those scans, and we're going to start in the lab to fabricate the dentures. So our next segment, we're going to talk about what the dentist needs to do with their intraoral scanner, their PrimeScan, to capture this accurately, to give us what we need to start that fabrication process. So see you in a bit. All right, guys, we've got our denture impressed. Our reference dentures have got the impression and bite. We've got our PrimeScan in play now. And so the last thing we're going to do with our dentures before we start scanning, and I like to do this just in case. Some of these colored materials actually scan pretty well, but just in case, let's just give it a light dusting of powder. This helps our scanner pick up a little bit. We're going to clean this up anyway, so Just a little, any scan powder will work, and I don't coat it heavily. I just want a little bit of reference points for the scanner. And then now we're ready to go to our PrimeScan. So the question I always get with PrimeScan users is, how do I set this up? Because there's no denture in here. Well, we're going to go to the art setup, and we're going to select impression, right? So what we've got here is not a denture, but an impression. So that's the way we treat this, right? And we're going to do both upper and lower in this case. And so once we have it set up as an impression, we just go to next, right? Wake up our wand, right? And it's asking for lower jaw first. So I'll do this completely outside of the mouth, right? You can see how fast it is. Right, I'm going to set the upper down. Right, you can always come over here and see where you are, right? Go back and clean up the spots. So here's the important thing to remember about the scanning. Right, we're scanning an impression, not a denture. So the only thing that I really am concerned with capturing is the intaglio, the border, and the buccal surface so that I can line my bite registration. Our lab software is, we're going to tell the lab software that this is an impression. So I don't want to capture anything other than borders, intaglio, and the buccal surfaces of the teeth. And I'll tell you why. The labs are going to load this file in as a digital impression, right? And our lab softwares are going to say, okay, it's an impression, I know how to handle that. If we take, there's a way to capture a denture that's called a 360 scan. You'll hear this on the internet quite often. Some folks call it the cupcake scan. And a 360 scan says, I'm capturing everything. Intaglio, buccal, occlusal, and even the tongue side of the dentures. But we don't want to do that with this, because what we need this to be is an impression, not an impression or a scan of the denture. If we were to scan the inside of this denture, the tongue side, then we would make a completely watertight scan. And a watertight scan, when you tell the lab software that it's an impression, is a big no-no. It really doesn't understand what you're doing. So all we want to make sure is that we capture the borders, the intaglio accurately. A little data hole there. Always look for those small holes, right? But we can go back and pick up those scans. Try to go back here and get this heel a little better. Amy Jones is a much better scanner than I am, guys. Everyone will have their own favorite way as far as scan paths, what direction you take the wand. I typically start out on the ridge, capture the borders, and I'll come back and probably have to do some more on the borders, and then just zigzag across the palate. You're going to find that in some cases, this palatal area can be tough. If the patient has a very smooth palate, right, there's not a lot of anatomical features here, so it's hard for the PrimeScan to recognize it without some sort of landmarks. Right, that one is capturing pretty well, but it is an issue that will creep up on you. So how do you handle that, right? If you can't capture that mid-palatal area, what do? A couple of tricks I've used that work pretty well. You can take a dry erase marker, right, and you can draw some dots or some lines on that smooth palatal area, and sometimes that will help the PrimeScan. Occasionally that has not worked for me either, so I will go and take little small drops of wax, and I'll put 3 or 4 small drops of wax on the smooth palatal area, and then the PrimeScan really picks it up well, right? If it can see some sort of bump or ridge, it does pretty good. So doing that, I've been able to capture just about every smooth pallet, even on demo models. So just use those tricks when you're having difficulty scanning a pallet area. But this one, there's some bumps and things there that the scanner's picking up pretty well. But again, we're outside the mouth, so it's pretty easy. And after I've captured the intaglio and the borders, then I'll just pick back up on the border. There we go. And then roll over to the buckle. And again, the only reason that I'm scanning the buccal surfaces of the teeth is just so that my bite registration will align. It's very important that we remind our docs that we want 3 scans. We want the upper, the lower, and the bite registration scan. All right, we will examine that. Scan. Awesome. All right, next step. Buccal scan for the bite registration. Dentures back together with the bite that we took. Another lab tip, guys, go ahead and take your hot glue gun and stick these together and hold them together so that you don't have to do what I just did. Right? And I like to scan both sides. You could actually go back to the mouth. We could put these back in the patient's mouth and have them bite down on the bite registration material to capture that scan. But that's a pretty good scan. All right, we feel pretty good about our 3 scans. Then we just move forward and it will calculate all 3 scans and align the bite registration, and we'll be ready to export. We've scanned our intaglio of our upper and our lower. We've scanned our bite registration. Everything lines up really well. One last check to make sure there's no data holes, and we're ready to go send it to the lab. Right, so we're going to connect. Right, we started this scan. We started in the Connect software, right, not the Cerex software. So log into our Connect Case Center. PrimeScan will connect to the portal. Right, uploaded successfully. Right, we can enter our order data. Here's where, if we want to, message the lab. Right, we can say, reference denture scans. Please fabricate printed try-in. All right. All right, pick your favorite laboratory. Let's send this to National Dentex. All our information is correct. Set in our return date and time. Let's say we want this back in 3 days. All right, got everything filled out properly. Enter any notes we want to the lab, when we want it back, information about the patient, then we add it to the cart. This is like every other PrimeScan case that we're going to send. So it's at the cart, one checked, submit the cart, commission the order, And now the lab is going to get notified here in a minute that scans are ready. At that point, we're going to clean the denture, take the impression material out, clean the denture up, give it to the patient, send them home, and go ahead and point for our final delivery appointment. So, reference denture workflow using PrimeScan made everything quicker, faster, more accurate. Going to create a really, really good trying denture for the patient and make it a 3-appointment success. So, thanks for letting me spend some time with you guys.